Good morning, and welcome to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Congregation. It is so good to be together with you here in person and online. My name is Bernadine Cataletta, and I am one of today's worship assistants. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, welcome. As Unitarian Universalists, we are a people of diverse beliefs, but we share a common faith that every person is worthy of love, that what we do in this world matters, that we are connected to one another and to the earth. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcomed here. Today, we want to welcome Reverend Misha Sanders to our pulpit. Reverend Misha Sanders is a community chaplain in Metro Atlanta and a fiery preacher of the good news of universal love. She is dual affiliated with the Unitarian Universalist Association and the Fellowship of Affirming Ministers. She believes that the whole world is built and rebuilt by the stories we tell ourselves and each other. Welcome, Reverend Misha. This morning, we join with more than 1,000 Unitarian Universalist churches who begin their worship with the lighting of the chalice. And and we are having, Susan, would you light our chalice? Thank you. Our chalice lighting words today are, we light this flame to remind us that love is the center. As we grow and connect, mature and deepen, love remains the center. When the light of truth burns away all else, love remains the center. Thank you, Susan. And now, in the spirit of love and the beloved community, let's share our congregational affirmation: we need not think alike to love alike. Let's greet and welcome each other to this new day. Those in the sanctuary, feel free to move around to offer greetings, and for those online, please use the chat to introduce yourself. Our, our opening words, I don't think this is on.
It's on.
Okay. Our opening words are adapted from Monica Jacobson. What is it that calls you here? That calls you onward? That calls you inward? That calls you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change? To ask those questions and to take the journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, and relationship is the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, share our truths, share this air, and share our hearts. Come, let us worship together. Please rise in body or voice as we sing together in song number 360, Here We Have Gathered.
Good morning. I'm Carol Shoemaker, and among other things, I'm a member of the pastoral care team. Now we pause and reflect on matters of the heart. Thank you, Susan, for placing the stones. For this morning's ritual, we have water and we have river stones. The stones are smooth and the stones have weight. They're indicative of both life's pleasures and times of ease, as well as life's burdens and times of heaviness. The water receives these stones with ease and calmness. Each week you are invited to write a joy, sorrow, or concern in the book or email it to pastoralcare@emersonuu.org to be read. If you're online, we invite you to recreate this at home. You place a stone in a bowl of water to honor what is in your heart. We begin by placing 3 stones. The first is in honor of the Cherokee and Muskogee nations of indigenous people who lived here before us. The second is for those wrongly enslaved here who labored on this land. The third is for all of those hurting in current conflicts and wars that rage across our globe. Within our community, we share these messages. This is from, sorry. This is from Sharon Saxton. On June 15th, my husband, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. Tom and I became first-time grandparents. Our daughter Cassie gifted us with a possibly beautiful granddaughter named Ayers May Lee. We are amazed and entranced and hopelessly smitten. This is from Judy Smith. My friend's granddaughter at age 30 has been fighting cancer for the last 6 years with incredible stoicism and positivity. She has had her 3rd major surgery last week and is having some difficulties in her recovery. We would appreciate prayers and positive thoughts for this brave young woman. This is from Susan Jordan. Kitty Antonio, a previous member of UUCM and Emerson, will celebrate her 100th birthday on this Thursday, June 26th, from 12 to 2 p.m. at the Arbor at Bridge Mill in Canton, where she lives. Bagpipers will play songs for her. Kitty was born in Scotland and came here in her 20s. There will be sandwiches and cake. She said instead of gifts, she welcomes donations to St. Jude's Hospital. Her family would love to have any Emerson friends join them. This is from Lee Purcell. Thanks to Emily Vinson, our Emerson office administrator, for driving all the way out to Sunrise Assisted Living Center in Sandy Springs to help me set up Realm and add the app. We talked before, but this was the first time I met her in person. It was such a pleasure to hear about her husband, Matt, and daughter, Kate. The jacaranda vine is blooming at their place, and the vegetable patch thriving in the heat. Emily is such a gift to our congregation, friendly, helpful, and warm. Thanks, Emily. Let's all give Emily a big hand, because I can tell you she's like that with everybody. And this is from Mary Frances Engel. My brother Paul is doing well after his open heart surgery. Thanks for your thoughts and prayers. Also, I have a brand new niece named Sally. She is absolutely beautiful. I have pictures. Okay, and this is an update from Melanie LeMay. She was beginning to heal from a fracture in her femur following hip replacement surgery. Then she suffered a fall, causing the fracture to split open, resulting in even more pain. She will now need a hip revision. The hip replacement prosthesis will be removed, the femur secured with cables and screws, and the hip prosthesis reinstalled. This surgery is scheduled for Tuesday, June 24th at Kennestone Wellstar Hospital in Marietta. George, her husband, is continuing to care for her, but Melanie is having a hard time dealing with her extreme immobility and increased pain. Any movement causes excessive pain. Her recovery from this second surgery will take 6 to 8 weeks. This is from Mark Cobb. My recovery after surgery is going well, with my wife and daughter taking good care of me. I'm taking great joy in little pleasures and getting stronger every day. Thanks for your good wishes. Our heartfelt thoughts are with those who did not share their joys and sorrows. In thankful awareness, let's say the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness. May we all be filled with loving kindness. May we all be free from the harm and suffering. May we all be well in body, heart, and mind. May we all be at peace. Blessed be.
One way we put our prayer of loving kindness into action is by partnering with other organizations who work to bring love, kindness, and justice to the world. This month, the Share the Basket collection is for the Minister's Discretionary Fund. There are needs within this congregation that go beyond the listening ear and the helping hand. Sometimes it's assistance with unexpected expenses at times when they cannot make ends meet. This may be to assist with housing, food, or medical care. The minister's discretionary fund is here when someone needs immediate assistance. It is a hard time for many. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully accepted. The basket will now be passed, and for those in the sanctuary, as the basket is passed, please feel free to offer a donation or see a card in the basket for other ways to give. For those online, go to emersonuu.org and select the Giving tab to donate. All donations, unless otherwise specified, such as for the pledge payments, are shared equally between Emerson and our partner organization.
careful, Bruce. I didn't want to interrupt. So, will the young and the young at heart please join us up front for the story for all ages? RE students are welcome. If not, I'll just stare you down. It's no hard feelings. It's fine. Okay. There you go. Okay. So today we're going to tell a story, and hopefully it's going to be something that you guys will be able to relate to, all right? So our story is about someone named Gene. Now, is Gene a boy? Is Gene a girl? It does not matter, right? What's important is that Gene liked to make things, okay? And they like to invent and create, and that's what they were known for, was making things, making big, important, complicated things. So the city had a problem. They had a bunch of stuff they had to get from over here to over there. So they needed Gene to make a machine, right? Now Gene had one problem, and I want you guys to think about this, what this problem might be as I kind of tell you the story, okay? So people came by, as they do to Gene's workshop, and they said, "Hey, Gene, that machine you're making, yep, you should make it red." I said, "Oh, okay, we'll make it red." And people kept having their suggestions. "You should make it fast." And I said, "Yeah, it should be fast. Okay, we can do that." So they made it fast. And they kept giving suggestions and suggestions, right? So they'd say, "Gene, it should be able to go really fast." Gene said, "I know." No. It should be able to go to the moon." And Gene looked at them like, are they joking? But they weren't. They were being serious. They wanted this to be a rocket ship instead of a dump truck, right? And Gene just kind of nodded, and because of Gene's problem, they said, "Oh, all right." And then people kept coming by, and they said, "Gene, forget red. It should have holographic paint." And Gene thought, I don't know if that exists. I don't know if that's a real thing. And people kept suggesting things, and they said, "It should travel through time. It should have room for all of my cats and coffee. It should speak Spanish. It should do all these amazing things," right? So everyone had all these really high expectations for what this machine could be, right? This machine that just had to get stuff from here to over there. So the day came to go reveal this. And the whole time, Gene is, getting like really stressed out, really upset. They'd be pulling their hair out, but Gene's very smart, which means they're already bald, like most smart people already are. And they had a big tarp, and everyone's like, "I can't wait for this." And someone said, "I think it's going to look like a dragon." And they said, "Wait, a dragon? I said a scorpion." "Well, we'll see, whatever." And they went and they tore the tarp off, and what they had was 4 wheels and a box and a little handle. It was a wagon, right? And do you think people were excited or impressed? They were a little bit disappointed. Because see, Gene's big problem is that Gene had a problem saying what word? 2 letters. Well, you have to say it, you guys. No, right? Can't say no, which is a very important skill. So Gene stood up and they did something kind of brave, which the braver thing would have been saying no right then, but the second braver thing is saying no right now. So I said, "Hey, I took all of your thoughts into consideration, but I'm limited by time and resources and our current understanding of the laws of physics. There's only so much that I can do." And people did what you'd expect. They did something that I've only seen in like cartoons and at Renaissance festivals. They picked up rotten fruit and vegetables and tossed them and said, "You liar! You're horrible! We believed in you, Gene!" Everyone was very hurt by this, right? And Gene was just getting pelted by so much rotten fruit. It was pretty terrible until someone stood up, and this was the town librarian. And the town librarian stood up and they said, "Hold on! I know how Gene feels. I've been hiding something about myself," said everyone. "I'm actually dyslexic." "That's why you recommend audiobooks and graphic novels so much. It makes sense." And then someone else stood up in the crowd and they said, "I've also been hiding something." And this was the guy that drove the town trolley. And they said, "I'm blind." And people said, "That explains the sunglasses at night. That explains the dog that never leaves your side. But I don't want to judge, but that secret seems maybe a little bit dangerous." But then the dog spoke up and said, "It's fine. I've been driving the trolley the entire time." And people said, "Well, that makes sense. It's okay." And then more people chimed in. They had someone in a trench coat and a fedora went and they pulled off their fedora and they pulled away their trench coat to reveal, I've actually been 3 kids in a trench coat this entire time. Not your friendly 45-year-old insurance salesman from Connecticut named Bob. One of the parents in the crowd said, Tommy, that's where you've been? Kids. And this just kind of continued on. The baker went and he said, hey, that fancy diploma I have, I didn't really go to Cookie Academy. It's not a real school. I just didn't think people would think I was smart enough to make cookies if I didn't have one of those fancy diplomas up. And then finally, a lady named Linda went and she said, I also have something to reveal. And she pulled off her straw hat and pulled off her face, which seems scary, to reveal, I'm actually 3 possums in a scarecrow outfit. And people said, that seems kind of derivative. And next to her, a man named Carl said, but Linda, we've been married for 30 years. How is this possible? We have grandchildren. And Linda went and tugged on the sleeve of his flannel shirt and pulled it away and said, because you're also 3 possums in a trench coat. To which everyone said, well, that makes sense. So people's minds were getting blown and their beliefs were being shattered, right? Up was down, left was right, red was black or whatever. And they all learned some valuable lessons that day, which is it's important to say no early, right? If you can, or now is fine too. And also to, not worry about people judging you, to not judge others, and to just mind your own business, which is one of the UU principles, I believe. I guess the 3rd one. All right, but thank you for joining me for the story. We do have to sing the song of dedication. Yeah.
Good morning. It's so good to be with y'all today. I bring you greetings from Reverend Christina, who's out gallivanting in Baltimore with thousands of other UUs for our General Assembly right now. I thought Reverend Christina was my friend, but then she had me coming up here to do a centering prayer after that guy tells a story. I don't know how I'm supposed to get you all in the mood for prayer after that. But here we go. Let's all just take a little bit of a deep breath together. I had a different centering prayer all tidy and ready in my script for this morning. It was all, matchy with the theme of the sermon and all very professional. The sermon on vulnerability. I had a prayer that matched that. And then we found out last night or woke up to the news this morning of bombs being dropped in Iran in our names. And I realized that we, Iranians, Israelis, Palestinians, U.S. Americans, humans, all the creatures of our earth, we are already, right now, a whole sermon and a whole prayer on vulnerability, are we not? Absolutely. Our very lives are a prayer. And that's enough words about that. So if you would join your heart with mine and with one another's now, let's just be together in the silence of the prayer that is our breath. From poet Nikita Gill, the rage you are feeling comes from the same place inside your heart as the love. That is why you refuse to accept a world where cruelty reigns and the fire consumes all. You have known hope and joy and kindness like you have known water. And justice is a river that demands you do not give up on it. Thank you, Bruce. It's beautiful. I'm going to try to talk a little bit fast today. I got a lot to say, and then we might go just a little bit over time. I hope none of y'all left a pot roast in the oven that you got to get back to real quick or anything, but I'm going to try to keep you interested. She came to the well by herself in the middle of the day when all the other women were when all the other women of town were busy doing other things. Now, not just today, but every day, that's when she came to the well. Drawing water was a bit of a daily social activity for most of the women, and they came in the early morning or in the late afternoon when the heat was a little more bearable. And so, what is apparent through a historical anthropological lens, although unspoken in the story as it has been translated down to us, is that this particular woman designed her days on purpose to be here at lunchtime when she could be alone, when the sun was at its highest and the temperature was the hottest. Now, it wasn't because she liked the sweltering midday heat, as we certainly don't have to stretch to imagine on this day after summer solstice here in Georgia. Nor was it that she didn't like the company of the other women. No, not really. It was because they were not eager to be near her, and she knew it. She didn't have any friends among the women here, and didn't seem that was likely to change anytime soon. Now, a lonely life didn't mean that she was always alone like this. She wasn't. Chances are there were children, lots of children probably, maybe not all resembling each other very closely in this particular mother's case. And sometimes her man was around, but who knew how long that would last? Heaven knows she'd been left enough times before to get used to the idea that it could happen again anytime. Although she knew from her history that if it did happen, she would again, not be very good at being alone for very long. There would always be another man. Women didn't want anything to do with her, but there was never a shortage of men. It hurt too much to think very hard about how much they really cared about her and how much it was about what she could do for them. But being with someone, for whatever his reasons, it seemed better than raising all these kids alone, maybe. Her name was lost to history, but a few centuries ago, our siblings in faith from the Eastern Orthodox Christian tradition got tired of just calling her the woman at the well, and they began calling her Photine. Photine was a Samaritan woman, not fully Jew, not fully Gentile, accepted by neither. The Samaritans were a people ostracized and looked down upon, and Photine was a woman ostracized and looked down upon even among her own. Unwanted, a woman with a bad reputation, and no one wanted her immorality associated with them because they were already Samaritans and needed no more of a burden than that. So she was an outcast among outcasts. And all the people knew who she was. The Rabbi Jesus sure did, and he didn't even live in Samaria. One needn't be a member of the community to have heard about Photine. So Jesus, the up-and-coming young rabbi that had all the villages abuzz with the word of his radical teachings, decided to take a quiet moment while his friends had gone away into the city to get some lunch, and he took a walk down to the well, where men usually did not gather. Now, Photine wasn't up on the latest news because she was too often it. And she learned to, mind her own beeswax. So no doubt she approached the well that day with discomfort, seeing a strange man nearby, having no idea who he was, knowing that the well side was not typical man territory. She didn't know who this stranger was. She certainly didn't know that he had followers, was creating a buzz, fixing to go viral. She didn't know that, but apparently Jesus knew of her. And so he could have greeted her by letting her know who he was, but he didn't do that. He could have greeted her by letting her know that he knew who and what she was and why she was there at this strange hour, but he didn't do that either. What he said was, "I'm thirsty." That's it. That's the first thing Jesus did when he met this woman, was to acknowledge that he was vulnerable, had a need, and to give her the opportunity to be of assistance. Photine was a woman who, maybe just a little bit had trust issues with men, because her response was something along the lines of, Well, then I guess it's too bad for you. You didn't bring a water bottle. Really, that's pretty much what she said to him. I know, Jesus responded. I was hoping that maybe you could help me by drawing for me from your container. So immediately, another moment of vulnerability from the young rabbi. And maybe the beginning of a softening of the tough facade from Fotine. Still suspicious because she wasn't born yesterday, she asks him, How is it that you, a Jew, would ask me, a Samaritan, for water? And thus begins an exchange between neighbors in which Fotine gives Jesus water, and he begins sharing his gospel of universal inclusion with her. He gives her metaphors and doesn't dumb one thing down for her in fear that she won't be able to understand that when he speaks of the living water, he is talking about that which is eternal in us all, for us all, and flowing through us all. Jew, Gentile, Samaritan, male, female, non-binary, in-crowd, wallflower, pariah. Doesn't matter. He just drinks the water and has a conversation with another human being who is his equal, and that's it. Fotine is startled, to say the least. And Jesus senses, apparently, that she doesn't get treated this way much or ever. And he has a moment of realization that this woman doesn't yet quite know what he wants from her. No man speaks to her without wanting something. It's usually not water. So Jesus speaks ever so tactfully to the awkward tension of the moment, to her unwanted vulnerability in his presence by saying, hey, I'd love to talk with you more. Why don't you go get your husband and come back? I'd love for the three of us to have a chat together. And then comes the first time Fotine gets voluntarily vulnerable out loud. She says, I don't have a husband. And Jesus says, okay, your boyfriend. Sis, I know you don't have a husband. I know you've had 5 husbands and you're not married to the guy that you live with now. He said this neither to shame her nor to impress her with some kind of clairvoyance, but I believe it was to say, yeah, I said husband because I wanted to spare you the awkward moment, but it's all the same to me. I know who you are. I know about your partner and your living situation. I don't care what anybody thinks. I just see you, the woman who gave me water when I was thirsty. You met my need because you were here and you had a bucket. Well, I'm here, and I have a bottomless well of acceptance of you exactly the way you are right now, and I thought maybe you could use some of that. And so what Fotine does next has always amused the heck out of me. She doesn't do what Jesus suggested and go find her partner and come back to continue the conversation. Not right away anyway. Instead, she goes right into town and starts chatting up the women folk like she's a regular on the playground park benches with the other moms. Immediately, that's where she goes. She just marches right up to demand to speak to the manager of the whole Karen brigade and says, so, hey, is this guy Jesus? Maybe you've heard of him? No big deal, but I just came from having a drink with him. He invited me and my family to come back later and hang out. Yeah, we'll probably go. I don't know, kind of busy. Own it, sister. And she did. So let me just acknowledge that I, much like Jesus on that day, I don't say I much like Jesus very often. I, like Jesus on that day, also know a little bit about to whom I am speaking. I know that you, Emerson, you are not novices in compassion and in deep listening. You get it. So to talk about being vulnerable and listening to each other and caring about each other and to the needs of our community and our hurting world in this holy place is not only preaching to the choir, but it is also the student teaching what she most needs to learn in a place where I know that I could learn more than I can imagine. I know that, and I honor it. I'm here today just to remind us, to nudge us into remembering a nuanced thing that even while doing the sacred work of justice, we can sometimes forget. we can forget that in offering compassion, an essential truth about those to whom we extend our hands and hearts in service is this: we do not have more to offer than they. We are a part of an energy exchange between equals, and the benevolence that we bestow upon a needy soul is not merely a selfless gift to an unfortunate. It is simply an act of sharing what we have to offer with someone who also has something of value to offer the world. Every time, only always. I submit to you today that what Jesus did for Fotine at the well was compassionate, but it was really a step beyond compassion. It was a step beyond compassion. It is a step beyond compassion when you offer unconditional help to me with the understanding that whether or not I ever do anything for you, I am your equal, and that you are just as likely to be the one with the outstretched hand receiving compassion from me in some way, now or in the future. Jesus could have begun his social justice campaign to Fotine by saying, "Hi, you probably know that I'm a pretty famous rabbi, and I'm here to bestow upon you mercy and drop some spiritual knowledge. You sit on that side of the well, I will stand over here. I will teach you stuff from a respectable distance because I know your history." He could have done that. It would have begun a very different exchange than beginning with, "Hi, my name is Jesus, I'm really thirsty." People who help people, we do that superiority thing sometimes, don't we? Not in words, but we don't need words to convey how we feel about each other. We really don't. Our energy comes through. There's an old episode of the podcast and radio show many of you are probably familiar with, This American Life. And I think about this particular story often. It's a story about rats responding to the energy we bring into the room. Now, I'm a devout vegan, so I don't particularly like most lab rat stories, but this one isn't too bad, fellow vegans. Stay with me. A group of very average lab rats were divided randomly into two groups. One group was given to researchers to put through a series of mazes, and the researchers were given the warning that those rats seemed to be extraordinarily dumb. Wasn't true, but that's what the researchers were told. Another group of researchers were given the other randomly selected rats to test in the same set of mazes, with the forewarning that those were unnaturally brilliant rats. And in measurable, observable tests, those deceptively labeled smart rats got through the mazes in record time. And the rats given the unfair label of doofuses apparently acted like they had about 3 collective brain cells, couldn't have found their way out of a holy paper bag, much less a complex maze. Bless their hearts. Based on, this blows my mind, y'all, based on nothing but the seemingly non-communicatable biases of the humans who were doing nothing more than observing them. The energy we bring into the room makes a difference to the fellow beings we encounter, whether anyone in the interaction even knows it's happening or not. Ooh, that gives me chills. It's kind of heavy and kind of really exciting, isn't it? It's remarkable. I wonder how much of my preconceived and wildly inaccurate notions about the kind of people who showed up in the domestic violence shelter I used to volunteer in, how many of those damn judgments in my own head came through while I was doing the compassionate work of volunteering some childcare hours for their babies? I wonder if the babies felt it. I wonder if the days when I walked through those doors at the shelter only after a centering moment of prayer and remembering that we are all equals for real, not just in rhetoric, and then listening more than I spoke, I wonder if that changed something about the energy of the house for the whole day. I wonder if that's really as far-fetched as it seems. I don't think it is. I wonder if I am more comfortable serving an unhoused, mentally ill sex worker at a soup kitchen then I would be serving alongside her on the worship committee. And how hard would it be to recognize that in myself and to do the work of making the shift to something beyond compassion, to true equalizing vulnerability? Compassion's a starting point, it's not the finish line. The work of justice is just an exchange between energy equals. It's just an energy exchange between equals. Let me just add something about us as Unitarian Universalists right here, because Jesus did not travel to Samaria that day just to have a drink with Fotine. He went there to minister to an entire town of outcasts, misfits. They were their own little island of misfit toys. And Jesus wanted them to know that the gospel of radical inclusion wouldn't be radical if it didn't include them. So many people come into our beloved Unitarian Universalist faith. And I know this story to be some of yours as it is mine. We come here often because we were cast out of our faith of origin. We're kind of like our own little island of misfit toys here. Heretics, outcasts, the kids who were a bad influence in youth group. We come here because Unitarian Universalism told us that we could come here just as we are, bringing our quirks and our queerness and our questions right in the door with us, not hiding them, but dressing them up in fancy Sunday go-to-meeting clothes and sitting them right on the front row. That's what we were told. And then we got here and found out that this place, y'all, it's just infested with humans who screw up a lot. Sorry, but it is. And because the culture of white supremacy, straight supremacy, masculine supremacy, able-bodied supremacy, etc., is a hard set of neural pathways to rewire, sometimes we don't always know how to be the welcome that we received or should have received when we first came here. Amen? Y'all, I can't afford to let myself get away with that crap anymore. I was a single mom, the end of a difficult relationship with no place to go, couch surfing on the homes of, in the homes of neighbors, family, and friends, when friends who believed that I was still their equal began to rally and help me find an apartment. And then they hauled their furniture and household supplies themselves over to help me set up a new life for my son and me. And I promise you, it did not take an extraordinarily intuitive nature on my part to know which of these generous, wonderful people got it about the energy exchange between equals. And it was many of those same people in my community of equals that loved me right into seminary. Because my beloved community had listened to me enough to believe that the broke single mom with a big mouth and a terrible job history, terrible relationship history, no car and bad credit was a woman with a call to ministry. How ridiculous is that? But they believed it. They believed it when I couldn't. Whatever happened to Jesus' friend Fotine was either never documented or those documents didn't make their way down to us through history. It's impossible to know. We'll probably never know her real name or what became of her life or the lives of her partners and her children. But we know that her story still gets told over and over in different ways, extracting different meanings in beloved faith communities all over the world. People still speak of the woman at the well. Beloveds, we are equal in our glory and in our misery. We listen to one another not because we are awesome, but because we are the same. So what I submit to us today is not that we need to change what we do in our compassionate work in the world. This church is already doing it. You help where you can help, and you find ways to help better. I know this. You might not always know that outsiders know it, but we do. What I simply came to offer us today is the opportunity to explore the idea of a soul shift, just a little bit, that moves us into a way of listening, a way of being that knows that the people to whom we extend our helping hands were already whole before we showed up. And that what they need from us is for us to show up as our whole vulnerable selves, our whole vulnerable, thirsty selves, and remind us together that we are one. Let us remember that some days, beloveds, the most compassionate thing we can do for another human in need of what we have to offer is to look them in the eyes and say, I'm thirsty. Maybe so. Y'all ready to sing? We're going to sing. You can stand up if you want to, if that's a thing you like to do when you sing. In his hauntingly beautiful anthem called, fittingly, Anthem, the late, great Leonard Cohen sings, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Today we're going to do a fun take on just that little bit of lyrics. I'm going to sing a line, then Bruce and the Brucettes will sing it back to me. And that's your line. When they sing the line back to me, that's going to be your line. We're going to let them sing it through first. It's as easy as repeats until the final line when y'all get to do something a little bit sassy. So let's listen to Bruce and the Brucettes sing your lines this first time. Let me try to remember to start slow because we're going to speed it up. Forget your perfect offering.
Forget your perfect offering.
Just ring the bells that still can ring.
Just ring the bells that still can ring.
There is a crack in everything.
There is a crack in everything.
That's how the light
gets
in.
That's how the light gets in.
That's how the light gets
That's how the light
in.
gets in.
Hear that little sassy part at the end? Y'all say, that's how the light gets in. All right, join with them and do it. Forget your perfect offering.
Forget your perfect offering.
Just ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. Hang on, y'all. Hang on. Let's churchify it. Forget your perfect offering. Just ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. Forget your perfect offering. Just ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. Oh, that's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. Yeah. Y'all sound great. That was fun. All right. Hallelujah, y'all. Our closing words are by my friend and colleague, the Reverend Julian Jamaica Soto. I know sometimes you get cranky. Sometimes your tea gets cold before you can drink it. Sometimes the news is too much. The resistance seems too little. That's real. But we are here, imperfect and together and reaching. You can hold my hand if you want. I washed it with soap. It's okay. In this kind of time, now is better than later. Now I love you. Now I'm sorry it hurts. Now I witness your struggle and mine. Sometimes one answer is to be a yes in the face of every no. I am a yes for you, now and again, later if you need me.
Thank you, Reverend Misha, for these beautiful words and your beautiful thoughts and your words of wisdom. As our chalice is extinguished this morning, we extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Couple of announcements. We have a large donation bin in the foyer as you enter through the front door for canned goods. Please bring a can or two to put in for Must Ministries to help feed those in need. This is an ongoing collection that we do, and every can you bring is greatly appreciated. Now, please join us next week as our Voices from Emerson series of guest speakers gets underway while Reverend Christina is on her summer break. Next Sunday, Jeff Jacoby will be sharing his message, Reconnecting with Rituals. As we look forward to other Emersonians sharing sermons this summer, so there's a lot happening in the coming weeks, and we look forward to seeing you here for all the sermons. We look forward to hearing Jeff next week. Now go in peace and take peace wherever you go.